Hello, this is Dr. Jacqueline with DTP-Leadership Group. I would really like to talk to you about hot topic bold talk. And what my topic is tonight is regret and reckoning. Former Trump supporters speak out and the GOP's latest attacks on America. I want to talk about the week and the harm that has happened, and I'm going to use Lizzie Fletcher's, who happens to be the congresswoman for my district, her March 15th, 2025 newsletter, because I think it gives a summary and it's really well described. She says, top of the mind this week is tariffs, trade, and tumbling stock market. President Trump signed an executive order imposing an additional 25% tax on steel and aluminum imports from Canada, raising the overall tax to 50%. Trump reversed the course after Ontario Premier Doug Ford agreed to suspend Canada's 25% tariff on electricity that's exported into the United States. The stock market, as you look at it, appears to be reacting to the financial insecurity that the administration is taking with all the actions they're doing. Now, I'm going to give you an even more detailed article that has a lot of comments. But what that's part of what Lizzie Fletcher is talking about. Another one is the development at the Department of Education. She says, as you may have seen, employees of the Department of Education received a notice that they were to leave the building by 6 p.m. And approximately a half hour after that, half of the employees, 1,300, received termination notices. And Lizzie Fletcher said, I co-sponsored the Protect the Department of Education Act to prohibit the use of appropriated funds to decentralize, reduce the staff, or alter the responsibilities, authority, and functionality of the Department of Education. The steps the Trump administration is taking, like many of President Trump's executive orders, are causing chaos for our students, families, teachers, and schools across the country. And she said, instead, the House Republicans paid no attention to all this. They brought in a 100-page bill to the floor that did not simply continue funding the programs at the current spending level, which is what a continuing resolution actually is, but instead reduced funding for critical government programs and projects that people rely on every day. And she gives some examples. They cut $280 million in funding for the National Institute of Health, jeopardizing jobs and medical research and conducted in Houston related to cancer, Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, and more. So if you think he's not going to affect your health, you're sadly mistaken, because he is eliminating so much we need in research to determine where we are. That's how we became famous in the world, because we had some of the greatest research that happened. He's taking it away. He cuts Army Corps of Engineers construction projects by $1.4 billion, or 44%, which could include the Buffalo Bayou tributaries study and the Houston Ship Channel, but it also is going to affect many other states in what they've done. If you look at the flooding we're having, all the other things, we certainly need more Army Corps of Engineers than he's going to leave with us. They stripped the Congress of the authority to determine the Army Corps' project funding levels and instead gives the Trump administration discretion to fund projects. fails to fund the disaster relief fund, which is already in need of additional funds to assist with future disasters, and cut $40 million in election security grants, despite House Republicans falsely claiming for years about stolen elections and voter fraud. Now, she says, at a time when people across the nation, and including in her district, the 7th District of Texas, people are concerned about the Trump's administrative cuts to the government programs that they depend on. This spending bill makes it even worse because it gives more power to Elon Musk and President Trump to decide where they're going to spend and what they're going to do to cut more costs for healthcare, infrastructure, public safety, and more. House Representatives' bill gives away the authority of the Congress and undermines the checks and balances that are necessary to be a democratic system. For these reasons, I voted against the spending resolution. So if you want the truth about what's happening in Washington, I encourage you to get Lizzie Fletcher's email. And you can do that because it will be listed in the references. She really stands for things that I think matter to all Americans. One of the ways I can cover more articles is to use only the headlines. And through the headlines, you can find the ones that maybe you're more interested in. And through the headlines, you can put them in your, you can search them in the internet and you will get the articles. Now, I am going to provide not only the headline list in my podcast and blog, but I'm also going to provide the primary references that I use to give you the details about things. But here are the headlines that I want to focus on. Judge orders thousands of federal workers reinstated. This judge ordered that 6 federal agencies have to rehire their probationary workers, calling Trump's justification for firing them a sham. U.S. stocks have the worst day of 2025. We're talking about March 10th, as the economic fears grow. In March, we had 3 occurrences of market crashing. Next one, how Trump's second term might affect the market and your finances. This describes what market experts say about Trump and his decisions. They are shocked that they thought he was going to lower taxes and we would have less deregulation. Instead, what they missed was that he was going to focus on tariffs and punishing the people that were attempting to hold him accountable for so many years. We need to face the fact that the market depends on how companies do well. They have to have high profitabilities, and then the market is great. And when it falls because of the uncertainty and the impact that Musk and Trump are having on the economy, then it's going to go down. And I'm going to give you a much better description of this because there is an excellent article that talks about the economy. Another headline, Trump administration deports hundreds of immigrants even as the judge orders their removal stopped. Now, this judge, Osberg, verbally ordered the planes to be turned around, and they were not. The professor of a law center says that this judge's verbal direction to turn the planes around was not a part of the order, but that the Trump administration clearly violated the spirit of the law and what the order was. Now, this will require judges to be more directive in their written orders because Trump is going to play any game he can to get what he wants. But it's very clear this judge says, oh, you can't use an 18th century wartime declaration. It's unacceptable to try to deport people. And I think it's important for you to know that Salvadorian president, who's a big supporter of Trump, makes $6 million of our money to house 300 immigrants in his prisons. Please be aware that Trump and Republicans are not law and order. They have no respect for the law. Another headline, how Trump hardline tactics are driving down migration. Now, he took what Biden had accomplished in limiting migration at the end of his presidency, and he's now strong arming regional leaders all along our border, and because he's deploying military force and shredding any decade of presidency policies that have been a part of the U.S. Mexican border for years. Now, there is no longer an established policy for immigrants to come to the United States. All Trump is focused on is getting them out of the United States. It doesn't matter whether they're criminals or not. I will admit this, one of the mistakes that I think the Democratic Party made is they did not emphasize the later stages of Biden's immigration policy that worked to curtail large migration. The hateful and harsh and forceful actions that Trump is taking, I think, are outrageous. Biden's immigration plan was built on collaboration with South American countries, supporting the decrease of migration, and it was continuing to happen. I already have a podcast on this, so look it up about immigrants and migration. Another headline, Trump orders gutting of 7 agencies, including Voice of America Parent. The order is targeting agencies. They're largely obscure agencies because he wants to have to not be bound or limited in his presidential power and authority. That article is very interesting to read, how he's manipulating the country and attempting to grab every piece of power that he can. Another headline is U.S. to expel South African administrator. Now, Rubio calls this South African administrator a race-baiting politician who hates America, and he's no longer welcome in the United States. The reason the ambassador was expelled is he gave a speech in Johannesburg, his country, at a think tank where he said Trump was mobilizing white supremacy in the United States and abroad as well. There are plenty of comments that are coming out in the news that criticize Rubio for his comments and his decision. And with this article, there are loads of comments about supporting the ambassador because they think he was speaking the truth about President Trump mobilizing white supremacy. And I'll give you more evidence of that. Another headline, the Trump backers who have buyer's remorse. These are ordinary human beings that are really sorry they ever voted for him. With every new policy, this article says, and his offhanded remarks, Trump belies the imagery versions of himself that inspired many of his supporters. The last comment in this article is, I think it's very powerful. It says his followers realize he is not the Trump that they voted for. They basically voted against the left and many of the things the left stood for. But in 2024, Trump benefited from this dynamic. But the article says, with all the comments made by individuals that had supported him, but come the 2026 midterms, he will have provided voters who have been burned by their illusions with him with something new to vote against. The problem with running as a candidate like he did on people's dreams is eventually they wake up and they find out who you really are. And they found out who Trump is. Now, I truly feel appalled at Rubio and other Trump supporters when they can't seem to pay any attention to the actions of what Trump, Musk, and Vance have been doing in Europe and various other places. Their comments on X that support white and male supremacy and domination. Now, let me give you an example. He's gone through and tried to wipe out anything on many of the websites. And of course, courts are now demanding that he put the information back. But at Arlington Cemetery in their website, they have taken down ways to search for all women or people of color that died serving our country. People are not paying attention to the thousands of ways that Trump is trying to change our experience in America. So he's taken away what all these individuals did. You got to be a white person, male, to be able to be on the search for Arlington's cemetery. Trump, Musk, and Republicans are creating America that we have never experienced before, a country without a meaningful government that serves the American people. The next headline, the big government contracts Dodge hasn't touched. Dodge has not touched the major spending issues which happen with defense. The group has had a minimal impact on the federal budget so far, but a big effect on many small businesses.
Recording in progress.
So again, I want to emphasize something. The greatest effect is happening with small businesses. Elon Musk and his team of budget cutters have claimed credit for billions of dollars in canceled government contracts. But their initiative has so far barely touched the biggest contract spending in the federal budget. There are over 200 billion that go to 10 large contractors, and Musk is one of them. I've given you the amount he gets every year. How Trump is reshaping reality by hiding data is another very important article. He is literally curating reality, which is an old political game, but Trump's sweeping statistical purges are part of a broad attempt to reinvent the truth. This article gives pictures and examples of what he's doing. By eliminating data on websites, he can spin the facts, cherry pick, and create his truth through repetition. And that's what he's doing. And they name 3 tricks he has. One is he always gives incorrect information or data. He gives misinformation. He also gives not only incorrect, but he gives misinformation, and then he alters the data if he doesn't like it. So this is another article that I think you would want to look at. Now, I'd like to go into more detail about the economic impact that Trump and Musk policies are having on our country. One of the best and one of the briefest articles I read is in the Washington Post by Catherine Rampell. It's entitled, Wall Street is Simply Flabbergasted that Trump is Wrecking the Economy. Who could have guessed this would happen? Here are the comments from that particular article. Wall Street is apparently shocked that President Trump is destroying the robust economy he inherited. All those self-defeating tariffs, those arbitrary federal layoffs, stripping work permits from legal immigrants, the self-dealing that he's doing, the dismantling of the rule of law. With high insight, she says, we did not appreciate the nature of what the administration was going to do, said a remorseful banker that she talked to. This banker told the Financial Times, and here's one of the comments that was made. I do believe they are hurting, the Republicans are hurting their stated objective of peace and prosperity. She goes on to say Trump's close allies and advisors are similarly rattled, spooked, and unnerved by the president's destructive decisions. And this is in the Wall Street Journal that she quotes. Were any of these people, she says, watching the same campaign that the rest of the country saw that he did? Now, Trump's personal choices have prioritized personal loyalty over sound judgment or respect for the law. The few adults in the room, the cabinet appointees who markets might have once trusted, have proven spineless, powerless, or both. Recall that one of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's first official act was allowing the Elon Musk U.S. Dodge service to infiltrate the sensitive data around federal payment system. The Sen also repeatedly misrepresented how much access that the Dodge bros had. Rampell says, to be clear, I do not blame regular everyday voters for not fully anticipating these outcomes. News organizations have proliferated, regrettably, Trump's voters who wrongfully believed he'd lower prices, make fertility care free, or crack down on migrant gangbangers, and who are only now realizing that just so much they see are their families are the ones that are going to lose with Trump. Social media has greeted these stories with all kinds of memes that are minimizing of what is happening. She goes on to say, though, but C-suite executives and market analysts have no excuse for getting Trump's economic agenda wrong. They are paid to make accurate predictions and to follow incremental regulatory and legislative developments. They were supposed to know that the tariff man, Trump, might raise tariffs and that the guardrails were being dismantled. They went into their eyes open-minded. They failed to look with eyes that could see what he was going to do. Now, Forbes, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and many other resources have multiple articles out there about CEOs and how they're confused by what Trump's trade wars are doing and how deeply concerned they are about the economy, and they feel unease and they're very concerned. They do not like the policies that have been implemented. So what I want to do is, again, in my previous one, I talked about organizations that fight against Trump, Musk, and the GOP. I did mention the 314 Action Fund, but I want to emphasize more about who they are in my previous podcast. I want to emphasize more now. They are the ones that support scientists running for political office. And they rather facts against corruption. Now, in their March 9 newsletter, they have a title, "Do You Think Dodge Should Be Dissolved?" And they describe the humiliating week from March 9th for Dodge. And I want to read these because I think they are so important. I don't want to miss the points. 1, Dodge accidentally revealed the location of a classified secret national security complex and 13 sensitive sites. 2, Dodge admitted to lying about thousands of cases of so-called wasteful spending and had to issue thousands of corrections. 3, fired nuclear safety, air traffic safety, wildfire responders, and bird flu experts, and are now scrambling to hire them back. 4, received backlash for trying to choose and 50 Social Security offices with a team of child interns, some of which are only teenagers, to make a decision to eliminate the Social Security offices that support and serve millions of people. 5, was exposed for plotting the biggest cut to the VA and medical research in modern history. 6, is under fire for claiming Elon Musk is and isn't the head of Dodge and isn't a member of the department. This ambiguity gives him legal coverage and allows him to not need to comply with ethics or conflicts of interest laws. And on March 13th, they have another one they've listed. Number 7, 2 judges just ruled that thousands of federal employees were fired illegally and must be rehired, was all demanding the release of the documents due to the unprecedented abuse of power and unusual secrecy of the department. Now, I think 314 Action Fund truly supports our country. They have a great story that is very short, that is about several of these scientists that are now in Congress. And I think it's something you will want to know more about. The Public Citizen is one of my favorites because they expose the GOP's attack on global health and 7 other areas that they are 6 other areas, but there's 7 lawsuits that they have going on. I think they say something really good in the March 11th newsletter. Slashing USA global health funding is an outright betrayal of America's role in saving lives around the world. Again, it's the third arm of foreign policy to provide aid. Now, I provided all of the things in my previous podcast about the lawsuits. But here's what they have done. Musk and Trump. They named UNICEF polio vaccines to millions of children was eliminated. A contract for malaria and other treatments to 53 million people. A project in the Congo that provides the only source of water for 250 people. The HIV treatment projects for medication in Africa. 87 women's shelters in South Africa for 33,000 survivors of rape and domestic violence. And food for malnourished pregnant women in Bangladesh. A judge ruled against Trump's administration, and yet Rubio had canceled many of the contracts. Despite the judge's ruling, the vast majority of U.S. humanitarian programs are now stripped of funding. Now, the public citizen is asking all of us, because they are in the courts fighting about this, they're asking all of us to call all of our Congress members and say, demand that the Trump administration reverse devastating cuts and restore congressional approved global health funding. We need to speak out and support USA aid and America's important humanitarian work. Another group, the American Constitutional Society, the ACS, defends our democracy and the rule of law. And I want to tell you about them. What they do is they are the nation's foremost progressive legal organization, which has a diverse national network that covers nearly 200 student and law chapters and progressive lawyers, students, judges, scholars, elected officials, and advocates. Their mission is to support and advocate for laws and legal systems that redress the founding failures of our Constitution, strengthen our democratic legitimacy, uphold the rule of law, and realize that the promise of equality for all people, including people of color, women, LGBTQ+, people with disabilities, and other historically excluded communities. They represent democracy in the judiciary, and they vindicate fundamental freedoms, protect democratic guardrails. They uphold the rule of law and interpret the U.S. Constitution through the lenses of history and lived experiences. There's one problem in the Supreme Court. They only have the lenses of history. They don't interpret based on the lived experiences we have, which is the reason we have a disaster in the Supreme Court. This organization, ACS, advances equality and justice, and they guard against the abuse of power. So they are busy with lawsuits of their own against Trump and Musk. They have a robust society that is very strong, and in a powerful article that is on their website, and I'll give you the website information and also their newsletter if you want to find them and keep up with them. But on February 26th, they have an article that says, we believe we are in a constitutional crisis. And as law professors and law teachers, we stand against the administration's illegal and unconstitutional actions. I counted, and I'm not sure I'm accurate, but I counted 1,019 names that are on this list that's been published that supports this statement. Their podcasts, their Zoom and in-person programs are outstanding and highly informative. I never want to miss one. They uphold the Constitution of the United States. They stand for the rule of law. So you need to get to know them, because that's not what is happening with Trump and Musk. I'm going to mention the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. And on their March 15th, 2025, they have a very short but clarifying comments about the failure of the Republican Congress to protect U.S. citizens, and describe the efforts throughout the country of Republicans using gerrymandering as a way to develop maps that will allow them to control this country. They fight that all the time. They have since their beginning. They could use some help, because now they have a problem, because Musk is spending millions to elect a judge in Wisconsin to the Supreme Court there. that supports gerrymandering and extreme laws. I have given you the email in the list, and it will be at the end of this podcast. They are worth connecting with. They fight for honest and fair redistricting, and we have a census coming up, so we need to support them. I've told you before that Republicans want to eliminate people so that the census will not show immigrants that are in our country, whether they're legal or not. Another group that I've learned about and didn't know a lot about, and so started reading about, is Right America. It's in Substack, and it's a nonprofit grassroots movement that's made up of conservatives and moderate leaders that want to defend the Constitution, fight corruption, and cast a bright vision. They're not a new party. They're forming a way that they can support the American democracy, the Constitution, the rule of law, separation of power, and the institutions. They're focused on three main things: fueling 150 plus lawsuits at the state and federal level challenging anti-democratic actions, including a lawsuit against Elon Musk and Dodge. 2, meeting people where they are, both online and off, to equip them to influence their legislators and begin shifting the culture of our communities and media. When massive numbers are enough to do something, leaders take notice. 3, they work with brilliant minds and harnessing the power of AI to reach and influence disengaged Americans. They've done testing, learning, perfecting, and repeating messages that break through in time for the future things that are coming to our country. You need to go to their website and read about them. They say no unelected billionaire should have the right to override democracy. And you know they're talking about Musk. Another one I appreciate is Mother Jones. And in their pamphlet that you get in the mail, it says how the GOP lost its mind. They're a really smart group of journalists. They have outstanding and award-winning journalists and stunning videos that are very educational. They are fearless in the way they converse. They are very centered on telling the truth. They stay independent, as they say, because you and I start to subscribe to them, and so our subscriptions are the thing that kept them stay independent. They're a very independent media group that is not a part of a conglomerate. In 2024, they were named Magazine of the Year by their peers in the industry. This kind of award is like getting the Oscars for the best picture in their industry. They were started in 1976, and they have been open for 48 years. If you're missing news that you'd like to find out about, you're going to find that they cover anything that you don't want to miss. I like what Elizabeth Warren said about them. Now she's talking about, they've been around 48 years, but she says, for 40 years, the pages of Mother Jones have been home to smart, aggressive journalists that shines a light on some of the most significant issues facing our country. So I think the facts and data that they have is very enlightening. And I know Mother Jones could be something you would enjoy and appreciate. Now, the last one I want to talk about in this podcast, as far as organizations that are fighting, is the Texas Civil Rights Project. I live in Texas. So the TCRP is a nonprofit organization that protects and advances the civil rights of the vulnerable population. Unfortunately, in Texas, there are certain groups that have been attacked, and they have historically been attacked. It includes immigrants, people of color, the poor, persons with disability, persons accused of crimes, and others. And so this group is the ones that take legal action to take care of these individuals. So it's the Texas Civil Rights Project. Now they're unique and they're homegrown. They are not connected with any other organization. That means they're not tethered to any national bureaucracy and are entirely focused on advancing equality and justice in our backyard. Currently, they are suing the Trump administration for his executive order that suspended asylum entirely. This directive, they say, is extreme, unjust, and unlawful. Our lawsuit challenges this policy, which denies vulnerable families safety, strains communities, and undermines U.S. values. We are fighting to keep immigrants from being detained in Guantanamo Bay. They filed a legal challenge for an unlawful detention of an individual from Venezuela with no criminal history. He has no criminal history, but Trump is attacking any Venezuelans that are here because they were brought in, a lot of them were brought in by Biden. So he's on one of his rampages. The lawsuit addresses the human rights abuse that this man has received. So I want to conclude this podcast and say the following. This is not a country I grew up in, nor one I want for anyone, citizen or not, to endure such disastrous and harmful actions from a government that's represented by Trump and Musk and the Republican-controlled Congress. We cannot afford to tune out, no matter how exhausted we are. Our country needs us more now than ever. Now, the judicial branch is pushing back through the hundreds of lawsuits that are being filed by all of these attorneys I've talked about. Previous generations have fought tirelessly to preserve our democracy, and now it's our turn. We must stand up, speak out, and demand an end to the destruction caused by Trump, Musk, and a mega-controlled Congress. The fight that is coming in 2026 needs to start now. We need to remove extreme Republicans from power and hold every elected official accountable. Now, I take action every day. I write and call my 2 mega Republican senators, tracking their voting, and attend town hall meetings and stay informed through Lizzie Fletcher's reports. I engage with Democratic groups, discuss these issues with Republicans and Democratic friends that are alarmed and horrified by what is happening. And I research extensively as I get ready to do my podcast script, Hot Topic, Bold Talk by Dr. Jacqueline. And I place that script as my blog so you can look more at the detail that I've described today. Through this work that I do, that I've named, I fight for democracy while making time for my friends, family, and the life I cherish. This is how I can pause and enjoy my family and friends and cherish my life. We have to be invested in resisting. If we all join together, we can win. Thank you for listening.